What is going on, guys? This is the Inside the Booth podcast. I'm your host, Vin, as we break down the New York Rangers' future and the pre-trade deadline acquisitions thus far. As we talk about the New York Rangers' future to start, we talk about the kid line. That consists of Kaapo Kakko, Filipino, and Alexis Lafreniere. And I think the Rangers, at the start of the season, really question of how these three players were going to develop. And, I think, Chris Drury, traded away Buchnevich and traded away a few players so these guys can shine. And at the start, these guys really couldn't, get it done at the start. But now I think we're starting to see, a breakout with these three players, in particularly Filipino. This guy has scored 7 goals in the last 10 games, and he's just looked probably the best of the three as we concern of development. This is a Rangers team that is young, and they could really have some firepower. And this team has just been so good as of late, mainly because some of the young stars are starting to really thrive. I mean, we even see Keandre Miller, starting to break out, with his offensive power that he's starting to show, and why he's, one of the more underrated players on this team. And, let's get back to Filipino. I think something that people haven't seen with him yet is his skating. I think he's been one of the faster skaters on this team, and his balance especially. He used to get knocked off the puck with ease, and that's why his balance has gotten better. Everything has gotten better in his game. Face-offs are still a problem. He's still not even close to 50%, but I think he's more of a guy that could play the wing. In my opinion, I think he's better on the wing than center. I don't think he wins the face-offs that Vinny Trocheck does and Mika Zibanejad does. And that really just mainly honestly separates the centerman is really just the face-offs. I think Trocheck's the best guy to win a face-off, and then it's Mika, and then it's Hedl. But I think Hedl is definitely one of the more underrated players on this team as well. There's just so many underrated players. I think my 3 underrated players with ease is Keandre Miller, Ryan Lindgren, and Filipino. Ryan Lindgren, that guy is tough as nails. That guy blocks, honestly, probably 1 to 2 shots a game, but they are hard shots that he blocks. I mean, he's taking some off the head, some off to the non-padded area, and I think, he's just been one of those guys that's really stepped up, Ryan Lindgren. And, with Filipino, he's been scoring more with Kaapo Kakko. His puck protection might be one of the best on the team. I mean, his hands are getting even better. I think I would just like to see him score a few more goals. I mean, he's got 11 points in the last 11, but I think, just if he could, nip a few more goals, he could really, elevate his game to another level. And, we look at Lafreniere. I think Lafreniere is a guy, more like 2 to 3 years, he's going to be even more impactful than he already is. I think he's already been, a big piece on this team, and he's going to be a big piece down the road. And that's why they drafted him, at the number 1 position. I think, when Kreider and Panarin, age a little more, I think he's going to be that next guy that Gallant is going to, pick to, be that number 1 guy in the power play and, be in the top 6 more often than he is. He's really, that kid line is really playing the third line, but I think they're a really solid line together. And, we saw in the playoffs how deadly they are when they get going. I mean, there was a point, when they played Tampa Bay at home, they had the puck in their zone, maybe almost 3 minutes, and then they finally obviously got the goal from Filipino. And that line can really tire out some lines, and that's why I think this upcoming playoff run, they're gonna be just like that. And I think once they heard that they were making the playoffs, they had another gear that they went to. I think that line showed more in that small playoff run than they did the entire regular season. And those 3 players were one of the main reasons why they made the Eastern Conference Final. And, speaking of the younger guns, we look at Igor Shesterkin. He's already evolved into probably a top 3 goaltender in this league. And my other 2 guys are probably Vasilevsky and Sorokin. I mean, those 3 are probably the best 3 in the league. And you can maybe make an argument for Connor Hellebuck, but he's probably my number 4. And just with what Igor Shesterkin has done and how he's developed, it's been amazing. He struggled at the start, but I think in Hartford he got a lot better, and now he's really been one of the brightest goaltenders in this league. And I think one thing that separates him from all the other goaltenders in this league is his puck handling. I think he's the best puck handling goaltender in the league. I think nobody plays the puck like him. I mean, you could argue Mike Smith, but I think Mike Smith is past that, and I think just Shesterkin could just find an outlet all the way down the ice, and in particular Artemi Panarin he finds all the time, and he just does it so well. I'm waiting until he scores his first career goal. He's missed one against Ottawa, and now he missed one against Florida. He's going to get one day, and when he gets that one, I mean, he's going to get quite the payday. We know when that contract is up, but I think he's got one of the best contracts in the league right now, 5.6 for the next few years, and eventually he's going to get paid the big money, and he deserves it. I mean, the reason why the Rangers are as good as they are right now is because of his play. He bailed the Rangers out multiple times last season, and one of the reasons why they made the Eastern Conference Final was because of his play. I mean, he stole a ton of games. After he went down 3-1, he stole a lot of those Pittsburgh games. And even that Carolina game, he made a lot of key saves. And that was the reason why they made the Eastern Conference. We look at some of the trade acquisitions that the Rangers have acquired. They acquired Tyler Mott. We'll start with him first. They got him for literally just Julien Gauthier and 1 conditional 7th. And Tyler Mott's a really good defensive forward, and that's the reason why they traded for him. I think with how I view this trade was Julien Gauthier was a great player in Chris Drury's eyes, and he started to finally break out this year with finishing his chances. Last year, some of those chances that he finished this year, he wasn't finishing last year, and it sucks to give up Julien Gauthier because he looked like he was starting to become a solid player for this team, but I think if the playoffs were today, Julien Gauthier would be a healthy scratch, and that's why they got Tyler Mott for his defensive play, and he could really play, the penalty kill, and do a lot of good things for this team and make them a better defensive team. And I think that's what Chris Drury mainly made this trade for. And honestly, I think when he let Tyler Mott go, I think it made him really angry that he made this decision, because I think now that I'm trading back from him, he kind of messed up, and now getting him back is huge for this team down the stretch. And I really liked Chris Drury making all these moves before the deadline, especially with Vladimir Tarasenko, who they acquired. Tarasenko's a really solid player. He's put up multiple 30-goal seasons. He had 82 points last season with the Blues. And, he's a guy that thrives under the big stage. I mean, when it's playoff time, that's when Tarasenko, I think, is at his best. He's won a Stanley Cup, so he knows how to win one. And I think just his offensive play in the playoffs is something else. I think he really does a really good job, and that's why I think the Rangers could go on another huge run. They got all the way to the Eastern Conference last year with that team, and now I think getting Tyler Mott and Vladimir Tarasenko is going to make them an even stronger team. And I think another thing that people don't realize is the Rangers practically gave up nothing for stars like these guys. I mean, they gave up Sammy Blais, who had 0 goals in his entire Rangers career. And it sucked that he had that ACL injury, and I didn't think he looked the same after that injury against the New Jersey Devils. But nonetheless, I mean, getting Tarasenko over Sammy Blais is a huge upgrade, and, Hunter Skinner wasn't really a prospect, in my opinion, that wasn't going to play with these guys. I think Hunter Skinner was just one of those meh prospects that, really didn't make an impact, and that's why, they traded him away. And, the prospects that we're looking at right now that that could make a big impact, especially, it's Brennan Othman. I mean, he is scoring at a ridiculous rate right now in his league, and he's going to be a solid player when he eventually gets the call up. But I really am excited for this team to make a run. I mean, this team could easily knock off some teams. They're going to be playing the New Jersey Devils in the opening round, and that's going to be a huge series. A lot of people are going to watch that series. Hughes against Kakko, and it really depends on how Shesterkin plays. I think the offense is going to really do a good job against this Jersey team, but Jack Hughes is going to be flying around. This is going to be a really solid series and one to definitely watch and get your popcorn for. I mean, I can't stop talking about this series. I mean, I think if the Rangers can get by the Devils, it would be huge. I think they definitely can, and I think the team to beat in the Eastern Conference is the Boston Bruins. They have no sign of stopping right now. I don't know who's going to stop them, but it looks like they're just cruising past right now, getting ready for a Stanley Cup run. And the Bruins are interesting with how good they're playing. I mean, I wonder if their head coach Jim Montgomery is going to honestly start sitting some of these players to get them some extra rest for the playoffs. Because I mean, sooner or later they're going to just clinch the playoffs with how they've been playing. I mean, they're going to win the President's Trophy. There's no one even close to him. That team in points, they are just dominant right now, and even if Patrice Bergeron is putting up elite numbers at his age, I mean, it's just crazy to me with some of these guys' ages, just how good they're still playing. I mean, you look at Ovechkin too, Sidney Crosby, they're still lighting up the league. I mean, Ovechkin soon to break the goal-scoring record held by Wayne Gretzky, and I mean, it's super fun to see this game, but. Let's get back to the trade deadline. I think, we didn't touch on this yet, is Mikkola coming to the New York Rangers. He's a solid depth defenseman. He's had a tad bit of struggles, but I think the reason, the Rangers got him was because of his reach. He's got a similar reach to Keandre Miller, and that's what Keandre Miller does to make him a good defenseman, is uses reach. Miller doesn't take many penalties, and, he's got super good puck skills as well, and he's got a good defensive stick. He's got one of the more underrated sticks on this team, and I think that's why they drafted him first off, and that's why they also traded for Nico Mikkola to fulfill that role as well. I mean, to get two solid players, he's got a lot of size, loves to throw the body, and he's just such a good player, and that's really what I have for the trade deadline. The Rangers could make another move, maybe Nick Bjugstad from Arizona, but I think this might be the team that they're going to roll out with. Maybe Chris Drury makes another move. We don't know, but it'll be interesting to what they do at the trade deadline to make this team better. And now we look back at the Rangers' future. They're one of the brightest teams in the league. They're one of the youngest teams too. I think they got one of the best futures in the league. And they got Igor Shesterkin for a long time. He's going to be staying here for a long time. Philip Hedl's contract is interesting on how much they're going to pay him. They're paying Mika Zibanejad at 8.5. They're paying Trocheck 5.6. They're in a tight cap situation right now. It'll be interesting of how much they pay him. And he's a guy that they could really lock up. I think Keandre Miller's a guy they could lock up for maybe even like 8 years with Keandre Miller. But it'll be interesting of what this team does with contracts. I think Chris Drury's done an amazing job. He's really changed the culture of this team. And they look like they're ready for a cup. This team looks like they're ready to go on a big run. And I would love to see this team win a Stanley Cup very soon, whether it's this season or seasons to come. I think Gallant has been a huge impact on this team, and I think everything the Rangers have done this season, they've done a solid job. They started off cold, and now they've really, started to really get going. And also a huge stat that came to my mind is they're 23-0 when scoring 4 or more goals. So I mean, when this team scores, You could bet your bottom dollar they're going to win that game if they score 4 or more. But, I think this is a team that could really go on a run. They're a really solid team. Whenever they got Igor, I'm never counting them out. And, this has been a fun episode, as well as we're going to wrap things up. This is Vin, your host. And that'll do it for episode number 1 of Inside the Booth podcast. And as always, good night, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're watching this, and so long.